I never thought it would happen to me, not after 37 years of marriage. Sylvia and I weren't one of those couples who you saw on the brink of collapse, or who had an obvious crack in the foundation. No, we had always been the ones everyone admired. We didn't have a perfect life, no one does. But we had something deeper, something I thought would last forever. Or at least, that's what I convinced myself of until she dropped the bombshell. It happened on an ordinary Tuesday, the kind of day you don't expect to change the course of your life. I had just returned home from a long day at work, exhausted but eager to relax in the comfort of my own home. Sylvia was sitting on the couch, as she often did when I got back, the TV on in the background, her fingers scrolling through her phone. But there was a subtle difference that evening, a tension in the air that I couldn't place. I've always been the type of person who doesn't ask too many questions, especially when it comes to my wife. I trust her, or at least I thought I did. So, when I noticed that something felt slightly off, I pushed the feeling down, assuming it was just the usual strain of everyday life catching up to us. But then I overheard something that stopped me in my tracks. I wasn't supposed to hear it, but I did. Sylvia was on the phone, talking in hushed tones. She wasn't trying to hide it, but she didn't realize I was standing just outside the room, barely visible. "Yeah, everything is set for tonight," she said, her voice soft, almost seductive. "I'll be there, just like we planned. It's been too long." She paused, then added, "I miss you." I could feel my blood run cold. I didn't move, didn't breathe. The world around me seemed to collapse into that single moment. She wasn't talking to a friend. She wasn't discussing some trivial matter. No, she was speaking to someone in a way that sent chills down my spine. Who was this? What was going on? The questions swarmed in my mind like angry bees, each one stinging worse than the last. I had no idea who she was talking to, but I knew one thing for sure. This was not the Sylvia I had married. This wasn't the woman I thought I knew so well. When she hung up, I couldn't hold back anymore. I didn't know what I was going to say, but I couldn't pretend that I hadn't just overheard the conversation. "Sylvia..." My voice barely left my throat, raw and thick with confusion. She turned around startled, and for a split second I saw a flicker of panic in her eyes before she quickly masked it. "Thomas, what are you doing? You startled me." "Who are you talking to?" I asked, my words barely a whisper. But I needed to know. I needed the truth, no matter how much it hurt. She hesitated, her gaze darting around the room, as if searching for an escape. For a moment, she didn't answer. She just sat there, her fingers clenching and unclenching in her lap, and then, slowly, she exhaled, as if resigning herself to something inevitable. "I didn't want you to find out like this," she started, her voice faltering. "I didn't know how to tell you." My heart pounded in my chest. This wasn't happening. I had to be dreaming. This wasn't the Sylvia I knew. This wasn't the woman I trusted with my life. "What do you mean?" I choked out, struggling to keep my composure. "Tell me what, Sylvia?" She closed her eyes for a moment, taking a deep breath as if steeling herself for something monumental. "I've been seeing someone," she said, her words like a slap across my face. "For the past 2 years." The room spun. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. The woman I had shared my life with, the woman I had loved without question, had been living a double life. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. I had been blind. I had trusted her, believed in her, and now I was left here, standing in the wreckage of a marriage I thought was unbreakable. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice small and trembling. "I didn't want to hurt you. I really didn't, but I couldn't stop it. I couldn't fix it." I stood there, unable to process the magnitude of what I was hearing. "Who is he?" I asked, my voice hollow. "Who is this person you've been seeing?" She looked down at her hands, tears welling up in her eyes. "I can't tell you. I don't want to hurt you more than I already have." The words hung in the air between us, like a thick fog, and suddenly I realized that the woman I had shared a bed with, the woman I thought was my partner, had hidden this secret from me for years. For 2 years, she had been living a lie. How could I have not seen the signs? How could I have been so blind? But even as the shock settled in, another thought crept in. This was only the beginning. What I didn't know was that this revelation would open a floodgate of truths, lies, and betrayals that would turn my life upside down in ways I never could have imagined. What Sylvia had just confessed to me was nothing compared to what I was about to uncover. And that was only the beginning. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to say. The words, "I've been seeing someone else for the past 2 years," kept echoing in my head like a broken record. My stomach churned, my chest felt heavy. I couldn't comprehend what was happening, what I was hearing. Sylvia, my wife of nearly 4 decades, had betrayed me. How did I miss it? How could I have been so blind? She sat there in front of me, her eyes filled with tears, her hands twisting the hem of her shirt, as if trying to find some comfort in the fabric. I could see the guilt in her face, but it didn't change anything. It didn't erase the truth. It didn't undo the hurt that was now spreading like a wildfire in my heart. I couldn't look at her the same way anymore, not after this. I never meant for this to happen, she said quietly, as if explaining herself would somehow make it better. It was never about not loving you. It wasn't even about him, not really. It's just that something in me changed, and I didn't know how to deal with it. I couldn't speak at first. What do you say to something like that? What could I possibly say that would make sense of the mess that was now my reality? I don't understand, I finally whispered, my voice hoarse. If you didn't love me anymore, why didn't you just leave? Why didn't you talk to me? Why did you let this go on for so long? She shook her head, her voice trembling. I didn't know how. It didn't happen overnight. At first it was just a conversation, someone to talk to when I felt alone. But it spiraled out of control. And then I felt trapped, like I couldn't stop it, even though I knew it was wrong. I didn't want to hurt you, Thomas. I never wanted to hurt you. The tears in her eyes were real, but they did nothing to lessen the weight of her betrayal. My head was spinning. My life, everything I thought I knew, had been turned upside down in the span of a single conversation. It felt like my world was crumbling around me, piece by piece. How long have you known? I asked, barely able to form the words. How long have you been carrying this around? I didn't know how to tell you, she said, her voice breaking. I've known for a while. It wasn't easy. I didn't want to lose you, but I didn't know how to fix what had happened. The room felt like it was closing in on me. I couldn't breathe. Every time I tried to take in air, it felt like my lungs were too tight, my chest too heavy. I stood up, pacing back and forth in the living room, trying to make sense of everything. I couldn't look at her. I couldn't look at the woman who had been lying to me for years. I had trusted her with everything, and she had broken that trust in the worst possible way. I don't know if I can ever look at you the same way again, I said, my voice cracking. I don't know if I can ever trust you again. I know, she whispered. I know I've shattered everything, but please, Thomas, just give me a chance to explain. Let me tell you everything. I stopped pacing and turned to face her. What more is there to say, Sylvia? What more could you possibly say that would make any of this okay? She didn't respond immediately. She just looked at me with that sad, pleading expression on her face. I never meant for you to find out like this, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I thought I could fix it on my own. I thought I could end it before it got too far, but I couldn't. And now it's too late. I stood there in stunned silence, trying to process everything. The woman I had loved for so long, the woman I had trusted with my heart and soul, had betrayed me in a way I couldn't even begin to understand. And the worst part, she had kept it from me. For 2 whole years, she had been living a double life, and I had no idea. It made me question everything about our marriage, everything about the life we had built together. Had it all been a lie? Was any of it real? Who is he? I finally asked, my voice barely audible. I needed to know. I had to know. If she was going to destroy everything we had, the least she could do was be honest with me. She hesitated again, her eyes darting to the floor. I can't tell you his name, Thomas. It's not about him. It's about me. I don't want to drag you into that part of it. I don't want to make this harder for you than it already is. I felt a surge of anger rise up within me. You don't want to make it harder for me? I laughed bitterly. Sylvia, you've already made it harder than I ever thought possible. You've shattered everything, and now you want to protect me from the truth? I deserve to know. I deserve to know who this person is, who you've been sharing your life with for the past 2 years. She looked up at me, her eyes filled with more tears. I'm so sorry, Thomas. I never meant for it to go this far. I never wanted you to get hurt. I took a deep breath, trying to control the storm of emotions brewing inside me. Tell me everything, Sylvia. All of it. No more lies, no more secrets. And with that, she began to speak. Slowly, hesitantly, but she spoke. And with every word that left her mouth, the life I had known began to slip further and further away. Sylvia's voice trembled as she continued, her eyes never meeting mine. I could see the weight of the words she was about to say. Each sentence seemed to carry the burden of years of guilt, and with each confession, I felt the ground beneath me shift, pulling me into a place I didn't recognize. "I don't know how it happened, Thomas," she whispered. "It wasn't supposed to be like this. I was just lonely. You were always so focused on work, and I felt invisible. I didn't know what to feel anymore. I was angry, hurt, confused. But most of all, I was numb." Sylvia had never been the type of person to let things fester for so long, but here she was, revealing a secret that had been eating away at her for over 2 years. "So, it started because you felt lonely?" I asked, my voice colder than I intended. "You thought I didn't care about you anymore?" She nodded, her gaze still averted. "It wasn't about you not caring. I knew you loved me, but I felt like I was losing myself, like I was just a background character in your life. I didn't want to be invisible anymore." I could hear the pain in her voice, and it made me feel like I was the one being accused. My anger shifted into something else, regret maybe. Had I really been so absorbed in my own world that I missed her suffering? Sylvia had always been the strong one, the one who held everything together. I never imagined she could have been falling apart quietly, all this time, right under my nose. "And then," I prodded, unable to stop myself, even though I wasn't sure I wanted to hear the answer. Her eyes welled up with more tears. She wiped them away quickly, trying to stay composed. "I met him at work. His name is Greg. He was just someone to talk to at first, someone who understood what I was going through. And then, it wasn't just talking anymore. I felt my blood run cold. Greg." The name lingered in my mind, each syllable feeling like a betrayal in itself. "You're telling me it was just talking? You never once thought about what you were doing, what it would do to us, to our family?" She shook her head desperately. I didn't want to think. I just wanted to feel something again, Thomas. And with him I did. I felt seen. I felt alive. I took a step back, running my hands through my hair in frustration. "And now what? You've ruined everything, Sylvia. Everything we've built. And for what? For a fleeting feeling of being alive?" I spat the words out, not because I wanted to hurt her, but because I didn't know how else to process the whirlwind of emotions crashing inside me. "I'm so sorry," she said, her voice barely audible. "I never wanted this. I never wanted to hurt you. But I don't know how to fix this. I don't know how to make it right." I couldn't take it anymore. I turned away from her, pacing back and forth in the living room, my mind racing with thoughts of everything we had been through, our kids, our home, our history together. It all felt like a lie now. Every memory, every laugh, every argument, it all felt tainted. How could I ever look at our life the same way again? The room felt suffocating. I wanted to leave. I wanted to scream. But instead, I stayed there, rooted to the spot, staring at the floor, trying to make sense of it all. "Did you ever think about how this would affect me?" I asked quietly. "About what it would do to our marriage? To the life we've built?" She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "Of course I did. But it was like I was trapped, Thomas. I didn't know how to get out of it. And the longer it went on, the harder it became to tell you the truth. I was ashamed. I still am." I could feel the weight of her words pressing down on me, but it didn't make it any easier to swallow. I wanted to be angry, to shout, to demand answers that would somehow make this all feel more justified. But the truth was, there was no justification. There was no fixing it. It was broken beyond repair, and I didn't know how to handle that. "So, what now?" I asked, almost as if I were speaking to myself. "What do we do now, Sylvia? Can we ever go back to what we had? Or is this it?" She looked at me, her eyes filled with sorrow and regret. "I don't know, Thomas. I don't know if we can go back. I wish I could change what happened, but I can't. I can only ask for your forgiveness, but I understand if you can't give it." There it was. The question that had been hanging in the air between us for hours. Could I forgive her? Could I ever trust her again? My mind told me one thing, but my heart was telling me another. I loved Sylvia. I had loved her for most of my life. But could I look at her the same way? Could I ever trust her the same way again? I didn't know, and that terrified me. "I need time," I said finally, my voice shaky. "I need time to think, to figure out what I want. I can't just make this decision right now." She nodded slowly, her face a mixture of relief and sorrow. "I understand. Take all the time you need." And with that, she left the room, leaving me alone with my thoughts. The silence that followed was deafening, as if the world outside had ceased to exist. In that moment, I wasn't sure what was worse, the betrayal itself, or the fact that I didn't know if I could ever get past it. But one thing was certain. I had no idea where this was going to lead. The future seemed uncertain, clouded by a betrayal that was too deep to ignore. And as I stood there, staring at the empty space Sylvia had left behind, I realized that the real journey had just begun. The choices I would make in the coming days would define the rest of my life, whether I was ready for it or not. Days passed, but I couldn't escape the nagging thoughts that consumed me. The house, once filled with the familiar hum of daily life, now felt like a ghost town. Every corner I turned reminded me of the life we had built together, and every room seemed to echo with the betrayal I couldn't erase. Sylvia was still here, still living under the same roof, but she might as well have been a stranger. Her presence was a constant reminder of the secret she had kept from me, and I couldn't get past it. It wasn't just the affair. It wasn't just the fact that she had been seeing someone else. It was the fact that I had been blind to everything around me, the lies, the small, subtle changes in her behavior that I had convinced myself were just part of the normal ebb and flow of life. I had trusted her with every part of me, my hopes, my fears, my dreams, and in return, she had torn it all apart. But I wasn't ready to give up, not yet, not after everything we had gone through. I had to try to understand. I had to know more, even if the answers would hurt. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I reached out to him, the man Sylvia had been seeing, the one who had broken everything I thought was sacred. His name was Greg, and I needed to know who he was, what he meant to her, and if I was really as replaceable as it felt. I found his number in her phone, hidden under an alias, a small, insignificant detail that, in hindsight, should have been the first red flag. I stared at the screen for what felt like an eternity, my finger hovering over the call button. My chest tightened. I wasn't sure what I was going to say, or if I even had the right to say anything at all, but something inside me demanded answers. I pressed the call button. It rang 3 times before someone picked up. "Hello?" His voice was calm, almost too calm. I froze. For a moment, I didn't know what to say. This was the man who had taken my wife from me, the man who had become the center of her world for 2 years. But I had to know the truth. I had to hear it from him. "Is this Greg?" I asked, my voice cold and steady, despite the storm swirling inside me. "Yes, this is Greg. Who's this?" I felt a surge of anger flood through me, but I pushed it down. I couldn't let this moment be about anger. It had to be about finding out the truth. "I'm Thomas," I said. "I'm Sylvia's husband." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. It was a pause that stretched on far too long, filled with a tension I could feel even through the phone. Finally, he spoke. "I didn't want it to happen like this," he said, his voice sounding surprisingly genuine. "I never wanted to hurt you." I let out a bitter laugh, one that surprised even me. "You never wanted to hurt me? You've been sleeping with my wife for 2 years. Don't act like this is some unfortunate misunderstanding." He sighed. "Look, I didn't know what I was getting into. Sylvia came to me at a time when she was feeling lost, and I made a mistake. I shouldn't have been involved with her. I should have stayed away." I felt a wave of disgust wash over me. This man wasn't even taking responsibility. He was trying to paint himself as some kind of unwitting victim in all of this. "You didn't know what you were getting into?" I spat. "You knew exactly what you were doing. You knew she was married. You knew exactly what you were doing to my family, to my life." "Yeah, you're right," he admitted. "I messed up. I know that. I'm not trying to justify it. But it's not just about me and her. It's about what she's going through. Sylvia's been struggling for a long time, Thomas. She's been trying to find herself, and I don't think she knew how to fix it." I was seething now, my grip tightening on the phone. "So, you're telling me that she had to cheat on me to find herself? You're telling me she couldn't come to me, her husband, the person she's been with for almost 4 decades, and talk about whatever was going on? She had to go behind my back and lie to me for 2 years? I know it sounds horrible," Greg said, his voice barely audible now. "But she wasn't just cheating because she didn't love you. She did it because she was hurting. She didn't know how to deal with the way she was feeling, and she didn't know how to tell you." I felt my blood pressure rise as I processed his words. How could he stand there, on the other side of the line, and try to justify this? Try to make it sound like it wasn't about him taking advantage of the situation? I knew that I should hang up. I knew that there was no point in talking to him anymore, but I couldn't stop myself from asking one last question. "Do you love her?" I asked, my voice trembling with a mixture of rage and disbelief. There was another pause. "Yes," he finally admitted. "I do." I ended the call without another word. The phone dropped from my hand, and I stood there for a long time, frozen in place. It wasn't the answer I wanted. It wasn't the resolution I'd hoped for. But it was the truth. Sylvia had fallen in love with someone else. She had sought solace in another man's arms, and I had been none the wiser. I felt my world tilt, spinning out of control. I couldn't stay in this house anymore. I couldn't breathe the same air as Sylvia, knowing that she had betrayed me so completely. I needed space. I needed time to think. But most of all, I needed to escape this suffocating feeling that was slowly taking over every part of me. I grabbed my jacket, slammed the door behind me, and walked out into the night, not knowing where I was going, but knowing I couldn't stay here. Not now. Not after everything that had happened. As I stepped into the cold night air, I realized one thing for certain. This was only the beginning. The truth had been exposed, but the fallout was just beginning to unfold. There were more decisions to make, more truths to uncover, and more heartbreak to endure. But as I walked away from the life I once knew, I couldn't shake the feeling that things would never be the same again. The cold air hit me like a slap in the face as I stepped outside. My breath came in ragged, shallow gasps as I walked aimlessly down the street, my mind a whirlwind of emotions I couldn't even begin to process. I had just spoken to Greg, the man who had been sharing my wife's bed for the last 2 years, the man who had somehow managed to convince her that her life with me wasn't enough, the man who had stolen the woman I thought I knew, the woman I thought I had loved, and in that moment, I felt completely, utterly lost. I wasn't sure how long I had been walking. The streets were quiet, dark, the only sound the soft crunch of gravel under my feet and the distant hum of a car engine in the distance. I found myself on the edge of town, standing in front of a bar I used to visit when I was younger, before life became so complicated, before Sylvia and I built a life together, before we had kids, before everything got so hard. The lights inside the bar flickered, casting an almost welcoming glow, but I didn't go in. I didn't want the distraction of alcohol or the shallow conversations of strangers. I just needed space to think, to figure out what the hell I was going to do with all this. My hands were still shaking as I reached for my phone. I dialed the one person I knew I could turn to in times like these. My brother, Derek. "Hey man, what's going on?" Derek's voice crackled through the speaker. He sounded as if he had just woken up, but I didn't care. I needed to talk, and I needed to talk now. "I need to see you," I said, my voice rough. "Now." There was a long pause. I could practically hear the gears turning in his head. Derek knew me. He knew something was wrong, but he didn't push. "I'm on my way," he said simply. I didn't have to explain myself further. He knew. He had always known when something was off, even when I hadn't been able to admit it to myself. And as I waited for him to arrive, I couldn't help but think about how much I had been fooling myself. I had spent the last few days in a daze, trying to pretend like things were normal. But nothing about this was normal. Sylvia wasn't just distant anymore. She wasn't just tired or stressed. She was gone. In every way that mattered, she was already gone. And the truth was staring me in the face. I replayed every moment I had spent with her over the years, trying to find some clue, some sign that she had been hiding this whole other life from me. The long hours at work, the late nights, the sudden coldness in her eyes. How had I missed it? How had I missed the signs of her pulling away? Of her falling into someone else's arms while I was too busy to see it? Derek pulled up beside me, his headlights casting a harsh glare on the street as he stepped out of the car. His face was shadowed, but I could see the concern in his eyes. "Talk to me, Tom," he said, his voice soft but firm. I didn't have the words at first. "How do you tell your brother that your wife of 37 years has been cheating on you, that the foundation of your entire life has been shattered? How do you admit to someone that you were blind to the reality of your own marriage?" I don't know where to start," I muttered, looking down at the ground. "She's been seeing someone else, Derek, for 2 years. I found out today. I talked to him." Derek didn't say anything at first. He just nodded, processing the words. "And how do you feel?" he finally asked, his voice quiet but full of empathy. "I feel like I'm drowning," I said, my voice breaking for the first time since this whole nightmare started. I don't even know who she is anymore. I thought I knew her, I thought I understood her. But now everything feels like a lie. A huge, crushing lie. Derek placed a hand on my shoulder. I can't pretend to know what you're going through, Tom, but I'm here for you, whatever you need. I nodded, grateful for his support. But deep down, I knew this wasn't just about me anymore. It wasn't just about the pain of betrayal or the broken trust. It was about everything that came after, about the decisions I would have to make, about whether or not I could ever find a way back to Sylvia, if she even wanted to be found. I wasn't sure what I expected from Derek. I wasn't looking for solutions or for him to tell me everything would be okay. I just needed someone to listen, someone who wouldn't judge me for my confusion, my rage, or my broken heart. And Derek did exactly that. So, what now? He asked after a long silence. What do you want to do? I didn't have an answer. I wasn't ready to talk about what came next because, frankly, I didn't know. I didn't know if I could ever look at Sylvia the same way again. I didn't know if I could ever trust her again. But one thing was clear. This wasn't going to be over anytime soon. There were too many emotions, too many questions left unanswered. I need some time, I said, the words coming out of my mouth almost automatically. I need to think, to figure out what I want. I don't know what the future holds, Derek. I really don't. Derek nodded, his face sympathetic but resolute. Take all the time you need, but you don't have to do it alone, okay? You've got me, and I'm not going anywhere. I looked at my brother, and for the first time in days, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe I didn't have to face this alone after all, but the road ahead was still long, and I had no idea how it would all end. I only knew one thing. Sylvia's betrayal had changed everything, and there was no going back to the life we had before. The following days felt like a blur of emotions I couldn't untangle. I couldn't stop thinking about Sylvia, about the lies she'd told, about the person I thought she was, and the one she had turned out to be. I spent most of my time in a haze, only snapping into focus when something reminded me of the life I had once known. The dinner table was empty, the house quieter than usual, and I couldn't help but notice the small things, the way her coffee mug had sat untouched for days, or how the light in the bedroom felt colder somehow. Every corner of the house seemed to whisper a question. What now? I had been avoiding her. I hadn't spoken to Sylvia since I confronted her about the affair. I didn't know how to face her, let alone how to forgive her, if I ever could. I didn't even know where to begin. She had broken something I couldn't fix, and now all I had were fragments of a life that once seemed perfect. I decided it was time to face her, time to have the conversation that had been hanging between us like a thick fog for far too long. But as I made my way back to the house, the weight of what I was about to do sank in. Every step felt heavier than the last, the house looming in the distance like a battlefield. It wasn't just about confronting Sylvia anymore, it was about confronting myself. Could I really go back to her? Could I find a way to rebuild what we once had, or was it too far gone? When I walked through the front door, I was immediately struck by the silence. It was almost suffocating. Sylvia was sitting on the couch, her eyes red from crying. She looked up at me, and for a brief moment, I saw a flicker of hope in her eyes. Hope that I might forgive her, that maybe we could put this behind us, but I couldn't just let it go. I couldn't pretend like everything was okay when it wasn't. You've been avoiding me, Sylvia said, her voice soft but edged with the tension that had built up between us. I've been avoiding this, I replied, my voice more forceful than I intended. I've been avoiding the truth, avoiding what comes next. But I can't avoid it any longer. We need to talk. Her gaze dropped to her hands in her lap, her fingers twisting nervously. She didn't say anything right away, but I could see the guilt etched all over her face. This wasn't just about her affair anymore. It was about everything we had lost in the process, the trust, the connection, the love we had once shared. All of it seemed like it had been stolen, piece by piece, without me even noticing. I don't know how to fix this, Thomas, she finally said, her voice breaking. I don't know if I can fix it. I sat down across from her, my hands shaking slightly as I tried to steady myself. I don't know if I can forgive you, Sylvia, I admitted, the words heavy on my tongue. I don't know if I can trust you again. You've broken something that I'm not sure can be fixed. Her eyes filled with tears, and I could see the desperation in her. She had never been this vulnerable before, never this broken. I made a mistake, a huge mistake, and I'm so sorry. I never wanted to hurt you, but I did, and I don't know how to take it back, I wish I could, but I can't. All I can do is ask you to believe me when I say that I love you. I always have. The words hung in the air between us, and for a brief moment, I almost believed her. The truth was, I had loved Sylvia for so long. We had built a life together, one that had seemed so solid, so unshakable. But now, with everything out in the open, I didn't know if I could ever look at her the same way again. Could I truly forgive her, or was that a bridge I would never be able to cross? I don't know what to do, I said, my voice a mixture of anger and confusion. I don't know if I can go back to being the man I was before, to being the husband I was to you. Everything has changed. How do I move forward when it feels like I'm living with a stranger? She shook her head, her tears falling freely now. I don't want to be a stranger to you, Thomas. I don't. But I understand if you need time, if you need space. I've broken everything between us, and if you decide you can't forgive me, I'll accept that. I just want you to know how sorry I am for everything. I could feel the weight of her words, but there was something else too, a sense of finality. No matter what happened next, things would never be the same. I knew that. I had to make a choice. I need time, I said quietly, the decision settling on me like a heavy blanket. I don't know if I can forgive you. I don't know if I can ever trust you again. But I need space to figure that out. I need to be alone. She nodded, her face pale, the guilt still consuming her. I understand, Thomas. I'll give you the time you need, and whatever happens, I'll respect your decision. I got up slowly, my legs heavy, and walked toward the door. Every part of me wanted to say something, to yell, to scream, to demand answers to all the questions swirling in my head. But I couldn't. I couldn't make sense of it. As I stepped outside, the cool night air hit me again, grounding me. But this time, I didn't feel the same numbness. This time, I felt something else. Something darker, something I hadn't expected. I was no longer lost in the fog of betrayal. I was standing on the edge of something new. I wasn't sure what that was, but I knew one thing. I couldn't go back to the life I had before. Too much had been revealed, and some truths were too heavy to ignore. I didn't know what the future held. I didn't know if Sylvia and I would find our way back to each other, or if this would be the end of us. But I knew I had to face whatever came next, one step at a time. And maybe, just maybe, that was the only way forward. The days dragged on after that conversation, but no matter how much I tried to distract myself, I couldn't escape the questions that haunted me. What was I supposed to do now? Could I ever forgive Sylvia? Could I ever trust her again? And most importantly, should I even try? The house felt colder without her there beside me, but at the same time, I couldn't bring myself to be in the same room with her. How could I? How could I sit down and pretend like everything was okay when I knew everything had been shattered? I had to make a decision, and I knew I couldn't keep avoiding it. I spent hours wandering around the house, my mind racing. I would look at the photographs on the walls, the smiling faces from our family vacations, the memories we had made together. And I wondered if they had been real. Were they as true as I believed them to be? Or had Sylvia been hiding something the entire time? I couldn't shake the feeling that everything had been built on a lie. I finally called Derek again. I had to talk to someone. Sylvia was giving me space, but I didn't know how much more I could take. It felt like I was suffocating, trapped in this constant loop of thoughts and emotions. I needed an escape, even if only for a little while. Tom, Derek's voice came through the phone, low and steady, as though he knew exactly what I needed. What's going on? I don't know what to do, Derek, I said, my voice breaking. I don't know if I can ever forgive her. I don't know if I can ever go back to the way things were. But the house feels empty, and I can't stop thinking about everything. I don't know how to move forward. There was a pause on the other end of the line, and I could almost hear him thinking. You don't have to figure it all out right now, he finally said. You need time to think. Don't rush into a decision. You've spent so many years with Sylvia. That's not something you can just toss aside. I don't know if I'm strong enough to move past this, I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. What if I can't get over it? What if I can't forgive her? You don't have to make that choice yet, Tom. Take it day by day. That's all you can do right now. I stayed silent for a moment, considering his words. Derek was right. I couldn't make a decision that would affect the rest of my life in a moment of overwhelming emotion. I needed clarity, and I needed time to understand what had happened, and whether I could ever get back to where we once were. I'm going to go for a drive, I said suddenly, a plan forming in my mind. I need to clear my head. Good idea. Take all the time you need, man. I'm here if you need me. I hung up and grabbed my keys. The car was always my escape when I needed to think. The road felt like a place where I could breathe, where the noise inside my head didn't feel so deafening. I drove for what felt like hours, my thoughts swirling around the same questions over and over. Was Sylvia worth fighting for? Was our marriage worth saving? Could I ever get past the betrayal, or would I forever see her through the lens of what she had done to me? The road stretched on in front of me, a never-ending ribbon of asphalt. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I couldn't turn back. It was as if every mile I drove was taking me further away from the life I had known, the life that had once seemed so secure. And with every turn, I found myself wondering if I would ever be able to return to that life, or if I had already left it behind. After a while, I pulled off the road and parked by a quiet lake. I sat there, staring out over the still water, trying to make sense of everything. I felt like I was standing on the edge of something monumental, and I couldn't see what lay beyond it. The pain was still there, a constant presence in my chest, but something else was starting to emerge as well. A strange sense of peace. Maybe it was the quiet, or maybe it was the fact that I was no longer trapped in the house with memories of what had been. For the first time in days, I felt like I could breathe. But even in that moment of calm, I knew that I couldn't run from the truth. I couldn't keep avoiding Sylvia, and I couldn't keep pretending like everything was fine when it wasn't. I had to face her again. I had to have the conversation that would either bring us closer or end everything once and for all. I didn't know what the outcome would be, but I knew one thing for certain. I couldn't keep living in this limbo. I had to make a choice, and I had to make it soon. As I stared at the still waters of the lake, I realized that the next step I took would determine the rest of my life. Was I ready to confront the truth? Was I ready to face Sylvia and decide if there was a future for us? The answers didn't come easily, but one thing was clear. The choices I made now would echo through the rest of my life. And no matter what happened, I had to stop running. I had to face the reckoning that was coming. I started the car and drove back home, not knowing what I was walking into, but knowing that it was time to confront it, time to face Sylvia and see if there was any way forward. The moment of truth was fast approaching, and whatever happened next, I was going to have to face it. When I returned home, I found Sylvia sitting in the living room, her face pale, eyes red from crying. The air between us felt heavy, as if the entire house was holding its breath, waiting for me to make the next move. I stood in the doorway for a moment, trying to gather my thoughts, to summon the courage I needed. The drive had given me some clarity, but nothing could prepare me for this conversation. Sylvia looked up when she heard the door open. Her face was full of worry, and she stood up slowly, almost hesitantly, as if she wasn't sure how I was going to react. I knew she wanted me to say something, to acknowledge her, to give her hope that we could somehow fix this, but I didn't know if I was ready for that. "Thomas," she whispered, her voice shaky. I don't know what to say. I don't know how to make this right." I swallowed hard, feeling the weight of everything we had been through pressing down on me. The betrayal, the hurt, the questions that had kept me awake at night. But I also realized something else in that moment. I didn't want to live the rest of my life in pain. I didn't want to continue this cycle of anger and hurt. It was time to choose whether to stay in the past or to take the risk of moving forward, together, into something uncertain, but possibly better. I took a deep breath and walked towards her. I had spent so many days running from the truth, from the hurt, and I couldn't do that anymore. I needed to face it, and I needed to make a decision about whether we could heal together or not. "I don't know if I can forgive you right now," I said quietly, my voice steady but full of emotion. "But I do know this. I don't want to lose you. I don't want to walk away from everything we've built. I can't just give up without trying." Her eyes filled with tears again, but this time they weren't just from regret. There was a glimmer of hope, of relief, as if a weight had been lifted off her shoulders. She reached out to me, her hands trembling, and I took them in mine. "I don't deserve this, Thomas," she said, her voice broken. "But I will spend the rest of my life making it right if you'll give me the chance." I held her hands, looking into her eyes, and for the first time in days, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. I didn't know what the future held. I didn't know if everything would be perfect or if we'd face more struggles along the way. But in that moment, I realized that the most important thing was that we were both still here, still wanting to try. "I'm not saying it will be easy," I said, my voice a little firmer. "We've got a long way to go, but I'm willing to try, and maybe Maybe that's all we need to start over. Sylvia nodded, her lips trembling as she tried to smile. Thank you. Thank you for giving us a chance. The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable, but full of unspoken understanding. We didn't have all the answers, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like we were on the same page. I wasn't sure where this road would take us, but I knew we had to walk it together, one step at a time. Days turned into weeks, and slowly, things started to shift between us. It wasn't always easy. There were times when old wounds reopened, and we both had to confront the pain that had been caused. But we were willing to put in the effort, to rebuild what we had lost. Sylvia made a conscious effort to be more present, to talk to me about her feelings, and I did the same. We spent more time together, going on walks, talking, rediscovering the small things that had once made our relationship strong. There were moments of doubt, moments when I questioned whether we could truly recover from what had happened. But we kept pushing forward, learning to trust again. One night, as we sat on the porch, watching the sunset, Sylvia turned to me with a soft smile. I don't know where we're going, Thomas, she said quietly, but I know we're going there together. I smiled back, feeling a warmth I hadn't felt in so long. That's all I need to know. And just like that, we took the first real step towards healing. We didn't have all the answers, and we couldn't erase the past, but we were ready to face the future. Together. It wasn't the perfect ending. There would still be challenges, still be moments of doubt and fear. But in that moment, as I sat beside Sylvia, I knew that we had both chosen to fight for what we had. We had chosen each other, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like we were on the road to something better, something real, something worth holding on to. This was the beginning of a new chapter, a chapter where forgiveness, understanding, and love would guide us forward, one step at a time. And maybe, just maybe, that was all we needed.